y'all. Can you hear me? I'm so goofy, y'all. All right, so before I start, I'm gonna just make sure I am live and y'all can hear me. Cause the last time I did this, I had the pastor on and y'all, it did not record. And I was so upset. Or I didn't go live. It recorded because I then just skipped over. Right, but let me just make sure y'all can see me. See, it's not popping up for me. Listen, child. Not now. Okay. It's live. All right, y'all. Hey, Conscious Crew. We are back for another episode, but I'm doing something a little bit different this time. I'm mixing both of my worlds. So if y'all have been rocking with me for the last 13 years, I transitioned this channel from like a beauty lifestyle to more educational. I love doing my makeup. I'm just very lazy. And today I actually have to do my makeup. And I thought, hey, what better way to do my makeup than in front of y'all and talk about this Reasonable Doubt? Because y'all, if y'all have not seen Reasonable Doubt on Hulu, what are y'all missing? Everything. You're missing everything. So I'm going to try to multitask. But I thought it was a really good conversation to have with you guys because this show is low key all about trauma. All about trauma. So I'm going to be switching from looking at y'all, well, really y'all up there, but I'm trying to use this as a mirror. So, okay. But I'm switching from looking at y'all to looking at my notes on what I had to looking at my face. Okay. Bear with me. So on Reasonable Doubt on Hulu, it's about Jack Stewart, right? And so Jack Stewart is this big time lawyer, and she lives in I think it's Los Angeles, and she's very successful. She's a Black woman. She's successful. She's a lawyer. I think specifically like a defense attorney, and she is trying to navigate her life in her marriage. We see her operating as a mother. We see her operating as a wife. We see her operating as a friend, which is great. I love that for us. But the thing is, she is really trying to understand her trauma, right? And we're watching in the first season and the second season some of her trauma unfold, which is crazy because she's supposed to be super successful, right? But we don't ever realize that the successful also has trauma that they go through. And so here Jax is, she is in the first season, we've seen her represent this man who is supposedly, I guess, guilty of killing his mistress. And I think in the end, if I remember correctly, it was really his wife who killed his mistress. But she's going through that. At the same time, in the first season, I'm giving you this backstory because the second season doesn't make much sense when it comes to trauma until you hear about the first season. So in the first season, she has this man she used to represent, which is Michael Ealy. I don't remember Michael Ealy's name in the show though. Yeah, and I didn't really think this through. This is my first time doing this in here. So it's gonna get real messy. But she represents Michael Ealy, and Michael Ealy, I think, has to do time. So she didn't win that case. But it turns out Michael Ealy really liked her. Mind you, Jax is married. Okay, she's married to her husband. I think he's some kind of like software or game developer or whatever. And in the first season, we see them kind of take some separation because the man is saying, look, you're not spending enough time at home. I get it, you're a lawyer, but you have kids, you have this relationship you're not tending to. And he's really in his feelings about it. And I get it, right? Because as successful women, it's really hard for us to manage sometimes our home life versus our life uh at work or in our businesses. So she's really successful. She's in her career. She's trying to manage it all. It's not working. So they take some time away. He ends up living in his own home for a little bit. She is holding it down at home with the kids. And I mean, they co parent. Ooh, child. Okay. They co parent really well. But because she's now working with Michael Ealy and he's out, and so she's trying to like help him reform out of jail, trying to reform. They grow this like alliance and this bond. Well, then having this bond now, I'm gonna fast forward season 1, okay? But then having this bond, they do. I think multiple times, and she's starting to find out that he is one really narcissistic. He was great at first, one with her, but then two, probably a little psychopathic. In season one, we also find out that she was sexually assaulted by her stepfather, which they keep alluding. I love how they do this. They kind of drop seeds throughout the episode. And so I'm giving y'all that backstory because we see all of her triggers unfold in the second season. Okay. So in the second season now, it starts with Jax. And Jax is I think she is like, they're replaying when Michael Ealy was about to shoot her and kill her, but he instead kills himself. And so when they're replaying that in her head, it's her reliving that trauma. And then we realize that she is really just in her therapist's office. And while she's in therapy, the therapist is like, okay, you're good to go back to work. When we're realizing that Jax is not okay to go back to work, but she's saying, okay, well, I'm gonna have to go back because, the therapist is giving me the okay. Again, she is a big time lawyer. People love her. I don't know if she ever loses a case, but she's doing her thing. And so as Jax is going back to work, she gets a call from her friend. And her friend is like, I killed him. Now, her friend, her name is Chanel in the show. Chanel was being cheated on and also abused in season one, but nobody knew Chanel was being abused. Chanel was being abused in season one by her big time football player. I don't know if they were married. Yeah, her big time football player husband. Okay. And so now we have so many elements of trauma happening, right? We're seeing the sexual abuse. So we're seeing the domestic violence. We're seeing the abuse that Jax, again, the lawyer, goes through. All of these things are happening in season one. And then in season two, we're seeing it happen all over again. And so as that's going on, she gets the call. And so she rushes over to her friend's house to see the dead body. If we know trauma, you know that a lot of things can trigger trauma. Things that might have not even happened to you can trigger trauma, and things that did happen can trigger trauma. She sees the dead body on the floor. When she sees the dead body on the floor, she automatically has a flashback. For y'all, a flashback means a moment in time when you might have had a traumatic experience. And in this traumatic experience, now your mind is bringing you back to that time, whether it's happening now or not. The crazy thing about trauma is even when you're having this experience, y'all, your body doesn't know it's not real. Your mind feels like the experience is happening. So she's seeing the dead, JT's dead body, and then her mind automatically goes back to Mikey Ealy's dead body because he shoots himself in the head on season one. And so now she starts to hyperventilate. Again, y'all, the most important thing I want y'all to take away from this is in trauma, you have a lot of emotions come up. And your emotions have no orientation. That's my favorite thing to say, which means it doesn't know time, place, or what's really happening. No orientation whatsoever. That's like why when you have a dream and you wake up and you're waking up panting, your body thinks it's real because your emotions are tied into your somatic reaction. So your bodily functions, they're all tied together. Crazy, right? And so Jax is reliving this in her head. Now remember, she got kidnapped. So Michael Ealy ends up kidnapping her and then trying to kill her, but then shoots himself. And so all of that all those flashbacks and those memories came from just seeing JT's body. And so now, obviously, y'all guessed it, she is representing Chanel, her friend, who supposedly killed her husband, right? Well, she killed her husband, but they're trying to know if it's like self-defense or not, because he is an abuser. All right. Now, y'all, I'm going to take a break to say this is actually harder than I thought because I feel like I'm going so slow with this whole application, but that's okay. Y'all just going to have to watch me. So if this doesn't convince y'all enough to go watch the show, go watch the show. Okay. Because all the flashbacks that are occurring, it happens for people in real life. It happens for people in real life because, again, when your body doesn't have the know-withal to know, like, okay, this isn't really happening, you can end up hyperventilating. You can end up having palpitations. You can end up having an anxiety attack because of your flashback. And it happens every day. So in Jax's case, we see this happen several times during the second season. Let me see this part right here. I'm trying to give y'all eye contact. We see this happen several times during the second season, but really it's hard for her to like get a hold of herself because as the season progresses, we're realizing that so much more is happening for Jax, right? Y'all, I don't even got no brushes. What am I really doing? I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop this makeup because I realized I don't have no brushes to continue. Or let me see if I can do it without the brushes. So we see Jax continue with the hyperventilation, and we're seeing her kind of go through these areas where she has no control. And if y'all know Jax, she prides herself on always having control. She prides herself on always compartmentalizing, which is kind of crazy. All right. But she has to get it done because she's a successful lawyer who has jobs to do at the end of the day. And she can't have her personal life interfere with what's truly happening. So I say that to say, when you guys are going through some traumatic things, please don't be afraid to speak to somebody. Please don't, because Jax did have her therapist, but she wasn't forthcoming. She didn't say, "Hey, I'm still having these flashbacks," or "I don't think it's okay for me to re-enter into work," because she didn't want to have a period of vulnerability, which is sad to say, but the vulnerability needed to be there. So I wrote down some sections, right? Because I was watching all these things. I was like, this poor girl is traumatized, but traumatized in the sense of her trauma is reliving in all of her interactions. So I think it was either the third episode, her mother. Now remember, y'all, I said she was sexually assaulted in the first episode. I mean, the first season. Her mother starts to date a new guy. And because Jax was assaulted by her stepfather, um, she didn't speak about it. She never told anybody, which was sad. I think she ended up telling maybe her mother at the very end of season 1. But I don't even think her mother really believed her. And then her mother started to, actually, she was telling her mother when she was a little girl, her mother did not believe her. So she didn't feel protected, which was another element of a problem when it comes to people who go through trauma and they don't have safe outlets, or people who are going to detest what they think is really happening. So her mother goes through and detests what happens. Now in season 2, her mother is like, "Oh, I found a new man." And Jax is like, "Who's this new man? Who's the new man?" And so when Jax is asking her these questions, she's like, "Oh, don't worry, people still want me." Automatically you could see Jax's nervous system kind of activate. And Jax is thinking like, "Oh my gosh, who is this man?" And she kind of retreats back into her old younger self because that part of her has not healed. And her daughter now tells her at some point, "Look, mom, I met the new guy." And I don't remember, let's say his new guy was Chris. Let's say his name is Chris. And her daughter says, "Mom, I met grandma's new man." And you could see, they did such a great job in this film, or in this show. Like, you could see the girls or Jax's body like tense up. And that actually happens in real life, right? Because Jax is now getting into this protective mode where she's like, "Oh, wait, this new man, is he touching you?" Because I think she says something to her daughter like, "Oh, do you like him? What happened?" Right? And it's alluding to the fact that something happened to her daughter, but that's just made up in Jax's head. Jax feels like, because somebody sexually assaulted her, her daughter might be more prone to be sexually assaulted by whoever her mother ends up with, which would be the daughter's grandmother. The daughter ends up saying like, "No, Chris is fine. I just don't like that he's in the home or something." I think she just wanted her grandmother's attention and not to be split with another man. That's fine. You women, you men, you people out there who have been sexually assaulted, and you start to project your worries onto your children, I think it's great that you're being protective, but I want you guys to understand that anxiety that you're projecting onto your children, they can feel it sometimes. And it's not the healthiest way. It's okay you need to have those conversations with your children to say, like, this is what good touch is, this is what bad touch is. But we oftentimes find ourselves having these conversations out of fear, other than outside of love, right? Because you are not dealing with your own trauma. So if you've been sexually assaulted by a family member or a close friend, because usually it just happens from people that you're really close with, it's important for you to get some help too. Right. And when I saw the scene, I'm thinking like, "Oh my gosh, poor Jax. Like, she is still reliving that trauma from her childhood when that man touched her and would continuously touch her, and her mother did not come to save her." And so she almost developed this kind of deep hurt for her mother, or her and like mistrust for her mother, which is why as I'm watching season 2, I'm like, ooh, Jax is an avoidant. She is not anxiously attached, she's avoidantly attached. So when we're seeing her go through some of those things with her husband, where like he gets Tony pregnant, which is her friend. Her husband gets Tony pregnant, not purposely, obviously. They were on this little break, but he wasn't forthcoming with it. When we see her go through that, and an anxiously attached person would tell her husband to leave and then ask him to come back right back. I said, I know if these people did their research and spoke to a therapist, we know Jax is very independent. We know that she is probably an avoidant at this point. Not avoidant to the sense where she doesn't want to talk about things that happen, because she's very vocal, but avoidant with her emotions, right? And so when she tells him to go, you can see her she tells her husband to go. You can see her sending texts, but she doesn't say like, hey, I want you to come back. It's like, okay, I'm good on you. She's giving the vibe of I'm good with or without you. And then I love what the producers did, because at one point when she was having her individual session, she started to speak to the couples therapist, because they're in couples therapy, her and her husband. And the couples therapist says something along the lines of like, has anyone ever told you that they're not going to leave you because you are so afraid to be vulnerable? And she was like, no, nobody has ever told me that. And I was like, dead on. See, no one's ever told Jax that that they would never leave her life. So she's okay with pushing them away. And that's what we do. When you're avoidant, you're okay with pushing people away. You're okay with not being emotionally vulnerable. You're okay with not accepting people into your life, because no one is giving you that security. And it's then further reinforced when we see Jax and her mother's interactions when Jax was being abused and nobody came to her rescue, right? That just further tells you like, I am responsible for my own feelings. I have to figure things out on my own. And it's a scary place to be in. It's really scary. And I think it's important that they even illustrated that, because at the end of, I don't know what episode we're on. We're probably on like episode 9 maybe of season 2, or maybe episode 8. She finally says like, hey, wait, as her husband is walking out the door. And I'm like, wow, breakthrough growth. Here is an avoidant person who is now able to be a little bit more emotionally attached, because she was very emotionally disconnected from her husband because her work was getting in the way. And that's why we saw in season 2 them separate. Her husband is really in tune with his emotions. Even though Jax was like, hey, we need to go to couples therapy, I don't think Jax understood what was going to come into play when she went to couples therapy. Because the therapist even pointed it out, like, hold on, Jax wanted to come to therapy, but you're the one being a little bit more emotionally open than Jax is. And so I wanted to just kind of touch on that. Another thing here is survivor's guilt. So when we go back, so let's rewind, right? When Jax comes to the scene and she sees JC body on the floor, and Chanel is kind of going through like this thing where she's like, oh my God, is he really dead? Did I really do this? Then you see her in court. They're both in this space of survivor's guilt, right? So survivor's guilt is when you go through a traumatic thing or something that's super stressful. Y'all, I can't multitask because this is just not gonna work for me. But you're going through something that's super stressful. Your body can start to take on those emotions as if you weren't really the victim. And so you're like, oh my gosh, I'm the perpetrator. I'm the reason why this is happening, when truly you were the victim. But because you survived it, you're going to start doing all of this self-blame. Like, oh, why did this happen? And we see that with Chanel, right? So Chanel's just like, I caused this. I'm so sorry. And Chanel at the whole entire time is not even addressing her needs or what happened or how he abused her. And remember, JT is Chanel's husband, who she killed because of like a domestic fight that was happening. Now, mind y'all, the show was not done. So I don't know if she truly killed him on purpose, but during the fight is when she killed him and he died because he was strangling her. And I think she grabbed the nearest thing and hit him over the head, and that's why his head was bleeding. But throughout the whole entire trial, we're seeing Chanel feel really guilty until maybe like midway through. She's like, wait, no, I was a victim. He has been abusing me for all of these years. Now we're going to pause to say, if you've been through domestic violence, and I say this all the time, I'm going to leave the hotline in the description box below. But I want you guys to also call 411. Get a plan. It's never easy to leave. So I know that for a fact. It's not easy to leave, but you do need somebody that's going to support you. And so I want to say, too, this is a sensitive topic. So collect yourself as you listen. She is having this guilt. She's thinking, like, I deserve this. I deserve to go to jail because this man, I hurt him so much. And she's forgetting all of the hurt he has caused her. And so this survivor's guilt thing is real. When we go through any traumatic situation, whether one of the saddest things is a long time ago, there were in my real life, there were 4 people in the car, and one of them died. The driver did not. That is a traumatic experience, right? So throughout the entire time where he is I'm trying to be very respectful of these people, because the people might be watching that know them, but throughout the entire time, he felt very shameful because he killed his friend accidentally, right? But he could not get past that. He could not forgive himself. The other people survived too. Just his friend died. He could not forgive himself. And it was actually very sad because it's like, yes, we are working through some of the trauma that you've been through with the car accident, but you also have to forgive yourself because you didn't purposely kill him. And it just made me think about this situation here. Like, I don't think Chanel purposely kills him. Mind you, this is a show, y'all. The Chanel and JT situation is a show. So she could have planned to kill him for his money. I don't know. But the way in which they're illustrating it, I think it just really highlights domestic violence. It highlights how trauma happens throughout life and how it continuously happens, and how we have to leave ourselves the space to heal, not just what we've been through, but our past selves as well, which is why I created this program called the Trauma Transition Elite Program, which again, I'll add in the description box below. But I did want to say survivor's guilt is real. So you want to go through that. So because y'all, I've been faithfully watching this show, and I was like, every single episode, there is a drop of trauma in here. So another thing that happened, right? I think I wrote here was when they were on trial. And so JT's mom, JT is the deceased, his mom was like called to be a witness. And they are talking to her, and they're saying things like, oh, how did you ever see his wife Chanel threaten him or do things like that? And the mom is coming to JT's, her dead son's defense, is saying, no, I've never seen any of that. I've never seen that. Until it's Jax's turn to cross. Jax and what's that man's name? He's from The Best Man, Morris Chestnut. So when Morris Chestnut comes up and crosses too, they say to JT's mom, like, hold on, have you ever abused your son? And she's like, no. And so then they have the evidence that, well, his mom used to give him like cigarette burns. And so I like to tell y'all, trauma repeats itself, abuse repeats itself. So here we have JT, who was abusing his wife, but JT was abused by his mother. And so it's just a repetitive thing that happens. And if we do not nip this in the bud, if we do not talk about this and just do things that are beyond talk therapy, but more somatic, which is what I do in my group program, you might relive these things. Your kids, your friends might experience these things from you. It might happen. So I want y'all to really think about it. Be a little bit more self-aware. Think about the things that have happened in your past and the things that you're covering up, because it's hard to address. I get it. It's very hard to address some of the burdens that we've been through because we cover it up, we compartmentalize it, and it's so much easier to compartmentalize than to really talk about what's happening, because it's shameful for some of us. Some of us don't even want to bring it up. Some of us don't want to think about things that have happened, especially if it's happened because of a loved one. But where does it leave you? It makes you feel unlovable. It makes you feel unworthy of love. It starts to probably mess with your self-worth. So you might not even feel worthy enough to be loved by anyone else. And I think that's what was happening too with Chanel, because we saw her run off with this other guy. But we do hear bits and pieces of her saying, like, thinking like, no one would love her because of the way in which JT was treating her. But truly, it had nothing to do with that. It had to do with herself, and it has to do with the the. Oh, let me say this, y'all. I can't. Y'all, I don't know how people do this. I can't multitask like this unless I'm telling y'all what I'm doing with my face currently. But that's ADHD for y'all. So when Chanel is feeling like, here, let me try this so I can still speak into the mic to you guys. When Chanel is going through some of these things and she's starting to feel unlovable, I also feel like Chanel, because it's a cycle, I feel like maybe Chanel didn't have a secure attachment to herself, because we will allow certain things in our life if we feel like we deserve those things. Right. And just by listening to Chanel say, like, oh, she thinks she deserves it because she killed him, I'm also thinking a part of her might feel like she might have deserved the abuse. And again, I don't know her life, but a part of her might have felt like she had deserved the abuse. If she was in my chair, I would ask her what her childhood was like. Some of y'all, so many people don't want to ever talk about their childhood, but really it's the root. It's the foundation of how we give love, we receive love, how we interpret what love is, how we interpret what a true provider is, like a emotional provider is. Because if your parents never took the time out to validate your emotions or pour into you positively or positively, I don't know, one of them, right? If your parents never took the time out to do that positively, there we go. You will accept any and anything. So Chanel did. The thing is, Chanel didn't even fall in love with JT because of his money. Because Chanel, we saw the second season, they unfolded the story of Chanel and JT. And here I'm thinking like, oh, Chanel wanted JT for his money first and foremost, but Chanel was the boss lady. He was under one of her contracts. So for her to have like stripped away everything and I don't know. This is a whole nother conversation, right? Because did she give up her career for the sake of JT's career? So, because she then had kids, they had kids together, right? They had kids, and they were both well off. So I guess there's gaps in that story, and I would want to know, like, you didn't marry him for his money. You were well off. Why did you give up your career? Was it because this was going to be better for your household? A lot of women do that, right? You have these big careers and then you meet a man, and that man might need you to stay home with the kids, which is okay if that's your understanding, and that's your agreement, right? If you want a very traditional household, but you also might meet a man who doesn't want that for you and wants you to work. Now, did she not want to work? And she was like, "No, I want you to take care of all the bills." I might have missed that, but at the same time, it's a security. He didn't provide her any emotional security. He might have provided her some financial security. Were you afraid to leave because of that? There's so many layers to this. But like I said, this show is a lot. Is a lot. Is a lot on a lot. It's three much at this point, but three much good. Like it's really good. And so I think I spoke about most of the things that I saw in the episode that I wanted to touch base on when it came to trauma with you guys. Very impromptu, because I was like, this show is getting too good, especially that last episode, y'all. Go watch it, please. Like, if you want to see the definition of how success can interfere with your relationships, this show, Reasonable Doubt, outside of the context of it, because I get it, people are on trial, but I'm looking at it through a clinical lens, because that's all I do. When you interact with me, sad to say, I probably do analyze you, and I'm trying not to, right? But if you know me in real life, I am probably looking at your situation and thinking of all the ways in which I can help you, but I never give help without people asking. I'm also probably looking at the situation and yourself and thinking like, okay, how can we work on this together? And this is friends and not friends, but like I said, I don't cross the boundary, right? Unless you want help, then we could talk about it. But I think this is just a wonderful series with the flashbacks, with how the generational trauma, with the sexual trauma, how that can come about. All of these things happen in everyday life, and I think they put it in a pretty package and call it Reasonable Doubt, especially for my successful women. So, y'all, I didn't finish my face. That's okay. Okay, I'm gonna get off of here and do what I gotta do because I gotta work. Okay, but if you are successful, you find yourself successful like Jax, or you just success in your own way, and you're feeling like there's so much happening in your life, but you don't have control over it. Like you're successful in your business, you're successful in your career at work, but you aren't successful in your relationships, maybe your marriage or anything. I have the program. It's the Trauma Transition Elite Program. Guess what? This quarter is free. All right. It's only a 4-week program. In the program, we are unpacking your trauma, but in a safe way. And it's phenomenal, y'all. So I use these evidence-based practices. So I get you can go to your therapist and you talk to your therapist. That's cool. And mind you, I'm a therapist too, so I'm not knocking them. But if your therapist or your professional or the coach that you're working with isn't doing anything somatically, the chances of your healing sticking are pretty slim. There's actually research out there, and the techniques that I'm using in this program, it shows that it helps to stick with the positive changes that you want to see. So those changes with your relationship, those changes in your friendships too, right? Your romantic relationships, your friendships, they are going to stick simply because we are tapping into your brain. Like really, we're tapping into your brain. We're uncovering those memories that you have buried. We're bringing them back up and we're reprocessing them. So reprocessing means that, let's say you have 2 areas of your brain, right? And when something traumatic happens in your brain, it gets stored in the wrong place. And what we're doing in our group is we're retrieving that file in your brain and we're putting it back into the appropriate place, because that appropriate place is going to lend itself positive healing so you can move from it, so you're not stuck in that trauma. So you see people that have flashbacks and then their behavioral changes occur. That's because they're stuck in the trauma. Now, I'm not saying that you're never going to have flashbacks, but you might have a flashback and not hyperventilate as much, or you might not have a panic attack as much. This program is going to help you with that. It doesn't have to be so like intense, but it could have been like, oh, I had a bad breakup and now I can't trust men anymore, or I just can't find the person that really loves me because I don't know what love really means because of my childhood abandonment trauma. We're going to go through all of that. And in the end, you're going to understand how your attachment style really plays into this. You're going to understand how the trauma that you've held on to is keeping you back from a really positive and long-lasting relationship. So, y'all, this was fun. I suck at multitasking, but I feel like I got a lot done. Killed 2 birds with 1 stone, kind of. My face is not done, but that's okay. All right, y'all. So I want you to drop in the description box, or the chat, I should say, if you are going to watch this show, if y'all have any other shows y'all want me to watch, because I just love, my pastime is watching shows and analyzing them as if they're my clients, because wow, the film world is just amazing. Drop those shows below. I will add it to my list to analyze and bring back to y'all, because I'm pretty sure y'all watching these shows because you see a part of yourself in them. All right, y'all. Walk good, keep the vibes high, and I will see y'all on the next episode. Make sure, if I can, I'm going to plug a video here and just watch it and share this episode, because trust me, it's good. Bye.